You are listening to an episode of the Square Circle Podcast. I'm your host, Marie Shadows, and this is a chit chat with Jarett Diaz Bodega Boy. Enjoy. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another brand new episode of the Square Circle Podcast. I'm your host, Marie Shadows. We're here with a very talented wrestler, and we have something in common. So that's also a great thing, too. He is a broadcaster, content creator, digital filmmaker, a pro wrestler, a personal trainer, and you can see him on IWTV, Wrestling Open, wherever it comes on the website as well. I am joined by the one, the only Jarett Diaz, also known as Bodega Boy. How are you doing, sir?
How's it going, Marie? Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to talk about whatever it is you feel like talking about today.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, first of all, we're both from New York City. I grew up in Manhattan. I moved over to the Bronx.
Shout out BX all day. We love to see it.
That's totally fine. The Bronx has definitely become my home because I've, watched many wrestlers definitely grow up wrestling in the Bronx and stuff like that. Especially, I'm used to BWF, Bronx Wrestling Federation, and stuff like that. So I think the first time that I ever heard Bodega Boy is by my buddy JD Alpha, which I think you should know.
Right? I know of him, yes.
Oh, you know of him. Okay, because he sung your praises and he really enjoyed what you were doing. So that was my first time. And then when you contacted me, I was like, wait a minute, that sounds familiar, So if you can, please let us know a little bit about, Bodega Boy and what it means to you, the significance.
Sure, yeah. All right. So, I grew up in the Bronx and a cornerstone breakfast is your little bodega sandwich, your bacon, egg, and cheese with the Arizona, which is 99 cents, prices on the can. And I feel like, just real quick before I get into the rest of it, that people think that I just drink this as a gimmick. I'm home with this right now. This is what I drink every single day. So I feel like, I guess the Bodega Boy as a character, as a gimmick, is this sort of street kid that kind of hangs out in the corner and messes with people or talks to people or whatever it is. And I, as a social creature, was always talking to Papi in the bodega, and or it's an Ock Deli or wherever I'm at, I'm making friends, I'm talking to people. And I sort of created this, I don't know, I guess this character, this mindset around it that if I could bring a little piece of home to everywhere I go, then that's something that serves me. So if I'm wrestling in Vegas, I'm wrestling in Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Indiana, wherever, I bring a little piece of home with me in my culture and my gimmick and in the way that I carry myself.
Which I definitely love because, being a wrestler, first and foremost, is the most important thing, because you got the foundation, but then you also need the character work. And sometimes taking a little piece of home with you everywhere you go, can help people relate, or they can learn something new and be like, oh, that's interesting. That's not part of their environment or what they know, which, I appreciate it. So I think that it's a very cool thing to have.
Absolutely. So I feel like it grounds me,
Yeah, definitely. I definitely understand that. So going back to my chat, I'm going to shout out J-Rod here. J-Rod is a Mets fan, but you were telling me a little bit earlier, before we started, that that's not always the case. What's going on there?
Okay, so at the very beginning of my wrestling career, I was trying to figure out what I was, and I knew I wanted to bring, like I just said, a part of me and part of home to everywhere I go. I was wrestling and living in Florida at the time where I first started wrestling, and I was wearing a bright green Jets hat, and I had just to match the generic bright green trunks that I had, or bikers rather. And I realized that Jets hat was getting a reaction from people, Dolphins fans or whoever. So I was like, all right, well, there's something there. There's something about that New York symbolism that gets a reaction right away before I even know what to do with it. And so I think to myself, okay, well, my next pair of custom gear has to do something with that. It has to bring some New York to me. And I think what's better to get a reaction from people than Yankee pinstripes. So I get a pair of custom trunks or bikers with Yankee pinstripes on them, and I Heart JD in the I Heart NY sort of font right on my leg, and people are mad immediately. I'm getting negative visceral reactions just off on site, on appearance, and I just start building around that. The person I'm dating at the time suggests, why don't you carry something like a slice of pizza to the ring or a bagel or something? I start bringing New York imagery to what I was doing, and then it's the Yankee fitted, it's a
Oh
chain, a
no.
Biggie T-shirt, things like that, to just further those reactions and further that New Yorkness while out of state, again in Georgia, Alabama, Florida.
Mhm.
If they don't know who I am, they at least know what I'm going to be representing to some degree, and they can just react off that until they get to know me. So
Totally.
I
That's like,
do,
yeah.
because I'm from the Bronx, I do represent the pinstripes. But as you can see by the shirt, by the Timmy Trumpets, that Edwin Diaz shirt, I'm actually a Mets fan. I don't really put it out there like that. Because
Totally
I'm from the
fine.
Bronx. I bleed pinstripes by accident, whether I like it or not.
Yeah, pretty much. It's the same way that when people talk about New York, it's either they talk about Yankees or like the Knicks, but then like the Nets and the Mets always get like some type of bad rap, and it's like,
Exactly,
guys,
exactly.
I know how that is too. So you did mention that you moved down to Florida. Did you go there for training and or something else, or just for
No,
like
I
training?
actually I went there. I went there to go to school. I went there to finish college. So a brief background: I was playing college football in Indiana when I came out of high school, and I was playing quarterback. And I went there for one season, and I left that school. It was a bad fit. I was in the middle of nowhere, and I wasn't happy. And so I came home to go to community college. And I always had it in my head that I wanted to wrestle after football, whenever that may be. But when football ended early, I was more in a headspace of like, I don't know what I am without football yet, and I wasn't really
Mhm.
ready, I guess, mentally to start wrestling. Uh, I'm finishing community college, and I'm still trying to play football. I'm touring a bunch of different schools, and I'm visiting with coaches and things like that. And I go visit Florida Atlantic down in Boca Raton, and it's not the best visit football wise, but I kind of get in my head. They're like, all right, like I like Florida. Maybe there's something out here that doesn't have to do with football. And it comes to my head like, oh, Full Sail University. They have like media and entertainment. They have this relationship with WWE. Maybe that's something I can go
Mhm.
do. And then I do a little research, and they have a sports broadcasting program, which is exactly what I wanted to do with college. I wanted to get into sports radio, sports talk, broadcasting in that way. And I just tried to marry it all. So I knew they had a relationship with WWE. They had a degree that I wanted, and it was in Orlando, Florida. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to pack up the Jeep and go. I literally packed up my whole life in a truck, and I left. And then maybe 2 weeks after me moving to Florida and being there, my girlfriend at the time, she was like, hey, like, football's done. You're done with that. You're just a student now for the first time in your life.
Mhm.
You always talk about how you wanted to wrestle. Now, time is now. Go, 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 go. Go look up a school and figure it out. So I did, and I connected with my second cousin down there. His name is Jason Cade, who was a very established, very solid independent wrestler. He was contracted with the MLW at the time, and I basically just followed his lead. And he would bring me to different schools, and he would connect me with different people as I got started. And that was I guess the beginning of my journey before I started doing my own thing and traveling out of Florida to go everywhere else.
That is fantastic. I always like it when either a plan comes together by accident or like you already know. You were mentioning before how like, when you were doing the college football, you were meeting with coaches, going here to this school, that school. Do you find it similar or not similar at all when it comes to like wrestling for like different companies around like the world?
I would say it was really similar for my experience, not when it came to what I was doing with what I was describing, but my high school
Yeah.
recruiting process. When I was coming out of high school, I was not highly recruited by schools going out looking for me. I was going out contacting schools. So I was for like 2 years, I was taking a trip a month to a new college, whether it be in Texas, Indiana, Oklahoma, Ohio, even as close as Jersey to as far as Georgia or Florida, trying to get recruited and put my name out there because I wasn't getting the right opportunities for schools to look at me. So in that sense, it's very similar, right? It's like you pack up your car or you get on your own flight and you go out of your way to get those eyes on you. And that recruiting process of nearly 2 years, built a lot of character when it came to like hearing no and being able to move
Uh-huh.
forward. But it also just became as simple as like, all right, I got another travel this weekend. All right, I got another trip this weekend. I got to go to another place. I got to perform. I got to perform. And always just trying to be on, or like be at your best on, a few hours of sleep. So that's
Yeah.
something that it definitely like gave me a leg up when it came to my wrestling career.
Yeah, that's like very wonderful. Definitely like very ambitious, driven, and like really going out there and stuff. So like I'm all right. So with high school football into like college football, where did that passion come about?
I played my whole life. My dad
Okay.
uh, played for the NYPD after he came out of college. So he became a police officer in New York City, and they have a football program. All of the major police departments across
Oh,
the country do. And so they all play each other. It's basically minor league professional football. And he was a very highly decorated detective and a very highly decorated football player. He's like a minor league football Hall of Famer. He has a very uh, ambitious and like go forward drive when it comes to football. And so that was put in me. I was playing quarterback when I was five
okay.
years old. And when I was 5 years old, that was like what I was told. All right, this is what you are, and this is what you're going to do. And I was good with that. Like I totally bought in. All of my middle school and high school memories are like football related, and or most of at least, which was a good thing because I was fully bought in. I was completely invested in that, and it didn't go the way I wanted to in college, but it also formed my or developed my hard work and formed my mindset coming out of high school.
Definitely. So I'm gonna ask you the same question about wrestling. Like, where did
Sure.
that passion come about?
Oh, I fell in love. I was 10 years old. I was 10 years old, and I was at the after school program. Both my parents worked, and I'm sitting next to a kid on the PSP, like the PlayStation Portable, and he's playing SmackDown versus Raw, like '06 or '07. I can't remember which one, but I saw like a slow mo animation of Shawn Michaels
Hmm.
hitting Sweet Chin Music like out of the corner in real time, and I'm like, oh, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. What is that? And he just tells me like, oh, it's like WWE, like pro wrestling, like, and I'm like, I don't really know what you mean. Like, I have a WWE game for GameCube, but I never play it. I don't even know what it is. And he was like, oh, dude, like Monday Night Raw is tonight. You got to watch it. You got to watch it at 9 o'clock. I'm 9, so I have a bedtime that's 9 o'clock, but I stay up a little late, just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like 9:10. It's real quiet. My mom thinks I'm going to sleep, and I turn the TV on like volume one. And the very first thing I see, I'll never forget this. It was like a fall entering winter of '06, and I see Jeff Hardy doing a suicide dive onto Umaga. Very first thing that I see when I turn on the TV, and I'm like, oh, that I'm doing that. That's what I want to do. And it took some years for me to get to it. When I finished high school, I went to Create a Pro, which is where I initially trained out on
Hmm.
Long Island.
Yeah.
And I went there for the summer right before I went away to play college football. And I trained there for a couple months. And I said, like, I'll come back to this. I'll come back to this. But that
Okay.
passion as a fan was always there. I was watching every Monday. I was watching as many Fridays as I could when I wasn't out doing something with family or friends or whatever. Uh, and I was in love, and that to this day hasn't left.
And it's kind of interesting as you tell that story because behind the scenes in DMs, I was like, yeah, why don't we book it for a Monday and call it Monday Night Bodega Boy? And,
I love
and
that.
Monday Night Raw, yeah, Monday Night Raw was like the
I
first thing you
loved I
saw like
loved the
at 10.
marketing. Absolutely.
Yeah, man. I just thought that that's a funny story that like ties into all of this. So if anyone out there wondering, it's Monday Night Bodega Boy, just because,
Yup.
at 10 years old, he fell in love with it.
Yes, I
Um,
did.
so you're over down in Florida, you're at Full Sail, which I wanted to go to Full Sail like at one point during like my education career, but I settled with here in New York getting my bachelor's in creative writing and a publishing certificate, and I was like, I'm good. I get to do what I want now.
For sure.
So I want to know, like, you started wrestling in 2018,
Yeah,
right?
that's when I fully started
And
wrestling and training full time, late 2018.
cool. And then you were doing most of that in Florida,
Yeah.
right? Or
Yeah. The
cool.
occasional like outward booking of Georgia or like Alabama, but it was mostly Florida. A lot of WWN stuff. Uh yeah, in state.
Um, so while you were there getting, your feet wet for the phrase of it, um, what are some fond memories do you have when you first started out?
Oh, that's a good question. The first time I ever left the state to wrestle was probably the coolest memory in my head. It was really simple. It was two people that I was training with, Jay Sky, Richard King, two of my best friends to this day. They invited me after somebody else said no to them uh, to bring a third on a drive for one of their first out of state bookings in Georgia. And they texted me, and within like 2 minutes, I was like, yes, absolutely. I'm going. Let's go. And I didn't think I would wrestle. I don't know if I was going to get paid. Didn't matter. I wanted to be on the road. I wanted to try that adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And we get in the car, and it's like 6 hours, 7 hours driving.
Yeah.
And it was a great time. Didn't matter. It's super fun. That's where the three of us bonded, and we eventually formed a faction out of it. But that's the first day that I actually really talked to either of them outside of like chatting in training or the occasional like me and Jay would hop on PlayStation every once in a while with a couple of different people and like play
Mhm.
WWE 2K together. But it was like a big group. So the three
Yeah.
of us getting in that car for the first time, and there was a girl in their group as well, Lexi, who became one of my dear friends later on. But like at that time, the three of us formed a bond on that drive. Probably the best time. When it comes to other memories, that's like stuff I was doing as an intern at the performance center. That was super formative, and I'm sure we'll get into all that. But yeah, a lot of like first wrestling experiences happened in Florida, so there's definitely a lot of memories like that.
Yeah. So before we do jump into WWE, I was doing a little more research, and the team name of your stable was called Rapture, right?
We are the Rapture. That's right. We were running as a big group for a little while. We grew up to
Yeah.
six, and then post COVID shrunk back down, and it was just the two of them that I was talking about and myself.
hmm for those that don't know who the Rapture was, like what was the main concept of like the stable?
Yeah, so it started based on a tag team, those two guys, Jay and Rich, uh, and I, they tell the story a little bit differently. But I didn't
Mhm.
form the group, so I can't really know what story is the truth. All I know is that it had something to do with the game BioShock, which is a game I don't
Okay.
play, so I can't speak on it. But it was formed as a tag team. The two of them started training like within like 2 months of each other, and they came in really quickly, and they were wrestling each other, and then they formed a tag team. They added on this girl Lexi Gomez, the unbreakable Lexi Gomez. She's wonderful. Uh, and then comes me, and then comes a dude named Demarcus Cutler who no longer wrestles, and then we had a manager added to the group, and we just kept growing and growing. Um, and most of our work was happening at WWN,
Yeah.
ACW, which was a show that would like developmentally basically feed to Full
hmm
Impact, with the intention of feeding to Evolve before they sold the company
Yeah.
to WWE and their tapes. Um, and that's where we were really cutting our teeth and getting our reps in, uh, to the point where we were good enough to basically take over the show. And we were the featured group every week and every episode.
Do you enjoy being in a stable, or do you just enjoy being a singles wrestler?
Both. I will
Okay.
say that I don't prefer tag team wrestling. For me, it's just
Okay.
it's enjoyable to watch, but as a performer, I am very much a singles wrestler. However, having
hmm
backup, having a group of people that have your back in those single situations, as well as just having running mates, having road buddies, the lifestyle aspect of like being in a faction or having a stable is awesome to me. I think that I was so fortunate that when I first started wrestling, I had a little community to do it with.
hmm
That had I started on my own, it would have been a lot harder.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite stables at the moment?
In the grand scape of wrestling, like
Yeah, in
overall.
wrestling. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, Blackpool Combat Club is awesome. They're killing it. Everybody in that group is just a murderer, which is awesome. I've always been a big Bullet Club fan.
Uh,
Uh, Less so now as the Elite went and formed AEW, but still interested. I'm still a fan of New Japan Pro Wrestling, even though I don't watch it as frequently as I maybe used to. With that being said, yeah, the Bucks and Kenny and the Elite, Undisputed Era for a while were a big
oh
favorite of
yeah.
mine. Um, yeah, basically all the cool bad guy groups are like my jam. Anytime that you can just bro out with your friends and kind of snub your nose at the crowd is a good time for me.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And if you need any updates on New Japan, I'm your girl as well.
Oh, love
Because
that.
I'm
Need
yeah. I'm basically like I got dubbed by my friends in like the podcasting community as a professor of New Japan Pro Wrestling, and then like I just developed like New Japan Queen, so I'm
Oh,
like
that's
the
great.
person to go to. Yeah,
Good. I'm gonna come
um,
to you for a New Japan update. You think I'm
you
joking? I'm
can.
not.
All right. I'll see you in my DMs. That'd be
Perfect.
great. Let's get into the thing that we have in common, which we both worked at WWE, which is kind
Sure.
of awesome. Uh, you had an internship with WWE down in Florida because it only makes sense. So how did that happen?
Yes, the internship, the opportunity of my life.
Yes.
So like I said, I went to Full Sail to try and marry it all together, right? I went to get this degree, but I also knew that this school had the relationship with WWE. By relationship, it was effectively that they were holding their NXT shows on the school campus in their live venue. And what they
Hmm.
would do with Full Sail students, they would use them as like marketing interns or sales interns, which was effectively they were selling tickets, they were helping promote locally, uh, they were ushering fans into the building and seating them, basically like low level event
Yeah.
planning type positions, which was
Yeah.
totally cool. And when I first got to the school, that was something that I asked about immediately. But I also knew that I went there for bigger things, or I went there for something that was more geared what I wanted to study and what I wanted to do with my career. So I went to my program director, Gus Ramsey, who used to work for WWE for the Edge and Christian show. He was one of the main showrunners on that and previously worked on ESPN. He was the program director of the entire sports broadcasting program. So when I got there and he was getting to know some of the students, I told him, I'm like, hey, the WWE relationship with Full Sail is exactly why I'm here. That's not to
Yeah.
say that I don't have the passion for other things and cover football and basketball and all of those other things, but WWE is the reason that I'm here at this school. How can I bring what I do with the program
Hmm.
and combine it with the WWE? And he said, give me a couple months and check back in. I said, cool, no problem. I'm going about, starting at the school. I'm also starting my independent wrestling journey. And I'm, like I said, trying to figure it all out, how to bring it all together. I check back in with Gus, uh, while also asking about the already in existence like internship that they were running with the sales and marketing.
Yeah.
I check back in with Gus, and he tells me, "All right, give me like another month, and I'll have something for you. I promise." I'm like, "Cool, no problem." Another month goes by. I check back in. You get Gus, what you got? He says, "All right, Jarett, check it out. We're working on an internship between our broadcasting students and WWE at the Performance Center. Uh, in about 2 weeks, we're going to start doing interviews. So get me your information, get me your resume, and things like that." I said, "No problem." I get him all of that. I am the first interview. I am the very first hire. I get the call that I'm hired before I even make it back home.
Man.
Why? I will tell you why. Because running the interview was Byron Saxton, Tom
Oh,
Phillips, and a woman named Dawn Hodges, who was one of the HR representatives for the company.
yeah.
I was able to show that I have knowledge of the business, passion for the business, without coming off as a fan. And that was something that they were worried about when it came to letting people in the performance center, is being careful about who we tell these secrets
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
who's going to act professionally in that setting. So I made sure that was like, hey, I'm here to work, but I need you to
Mm.
know that I love this and I'm here for this. And like I said, I was hired before I even got home. So fast forward about a month, the internship starts, and now I'm in the performance center twice a week, working with
Mhm.
Byron and Tom Phillips and Caleb Braxton, Alicia Taylor, who's now the head ring announcer for NXT, as well as other staff members, but also some of the NXT talent who eventually became friends. Casey
Yeah.
Catanzaro,
Yeah.
your Tegan Knoxes, Daniel Vido, Drew Gulak. A lot of the WWE talent that were in the performance center were the people we were practicing with. And by practicing, the roles that we were doing were uh, color commentating, in ring announcing, play by play, panel hosting, and live event hosting. So we had multiple different non wrestling talent roles that all the interns were going through. There were 6 hired at first, and then another five came on like 2 months later. So then we were like cycled out into groups. I was doing very well at this, and it was showing that I knew what I was watching, I knew what I was there for, and that I cared about what we were doing. After like 2 months, they tell me, "Hey, you're doing really well with this. We're not going to offer this opportunity for everybody of all the interns, but we're going to ask you, do you want to come sit backstage at NXT?" Of course I do.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
at the time, we weren't on TV every week yet. It was just still
Mm-hmm.
NXT tapings in house at Full Sail. So I'm sitting next to sitting next to Tom Phillips,
Mm-hmm.
who's to my left on the headset for a full taping. This is like 4 or 5 hours of TV getting made. As he's feeding lines or information or whatever it may be to Mauro Ranallo and Beth Phoenix and Nigel McGuinness, who were all on the call at the time. And I'm just soaking in all of this knowledge. And I got Keith
Yeah.
Lee and Dijakovic and Adam Cole and Tyler Breeze and Dango all behind me, whether it be, talking about their matches or
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about the show or whatever. Triple H walking back and forth. And I'm just soaking it all in. Not only as a broadcaster, but also as a wrestler at the beginning of his journey. And I'm trying to learn as quickly as possible because I knew that I was on effectively borrowed time in the PC
Yeah.
until I get back there full time. I am not going to be here every day, so let me learn as much as I can. And so I did. So shortly after that, I was following Johnny LaQuasto, who was on the call for 205 Live for a little while before the pandemic, to NXT Live events. I was doing the coconut loops, and I was watching him do his thing, but I was also, talking to Keith Lee and talking to Cassius Ohno and Gargano and learning how they put matches together, how they interact with crowds. I had the best wrestling education possible because I went and got a regular education at the place that I got it. And it always comes back to this, trying to marry all of it, trying to bring all of what I do together. I will say that I'm coming up on my 4th year in wrestling, but I know more than a lot of people who've only been wrestling for 4 years just because of the people that I was able to learn from. And I'm very fortunate. I'm very lucky to have those opportunities, but I also don't take them lightly.
I love that whole entire story. My
Yeah,
heart right
that
now
was a
is super
long,
happy. Nah, it's good, man. I love it. Because like your journey is a little bit different from mine when I got into WWE and stuff. But I wanted to make a quick comment of like after doing like my research, I was watching some of your matches just like recently, just to be like, oh, I want to see how like you wrestle in the ring, what kind of stories you tell. And like every match that like I was watching in the afternoon, it's all fun to watch you work, especially with guys that like I know. Like you had a match with Brother Greatness at NEW, and I
I'm
love
over at NEW. Which, a quick story, that was on my
yeah
birthday, and it was in Queens, which I've never wrestled in the boroughs before, and I was able to pack like 50 seats of like friends and family who all came to see
yeah
me,
man
and oh my god, it was like it just made my heart so happy. And
yeah
Brother Greatness is such a lovely, lovely man, and
I love
wrestling
him,
him on my
man.
birthday in front of my family in my hometown was like surreal. It was surreal.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites too. So I checked that match out and I was like, yeah, I'm having fun watching this one. You also wrestled Sophia Castillo as well too. Like, just intergender. And I was
She's a
like,
stunner. She's a killer. Love her.
yeah.
She's another person that from Florida, like, love her to death. She's gonna be my friend forever. She's awesome.
Yeah. So, because you got the behind the scene knowledge and talking to the wrestlers and stuff, like you could definitely see it in like, your matches. And most likely, like after this interview, I'll go on my Twitch community and watch some of your matches with my community. Cause that's what I do with like wrestlers and
Plug.
stuff.
The put on. Thanks. Love that. I'm so
I
lucky.
Yeah, man, I do it with like, people who are ambitious and really want something from this business and are passionate about it. I do have to agree with you that like the WWE process, even though yours is like completely different from mine, but it's the fact that like they do sometimes want to make sure that they're hiring the right person
Absolutely.
at times.
And that's only the first time that I worked for WWE, because then I have a whole second career with WWE that didn't even happen until the post pandemic.
Yeah, which we'll get into that because I have
Yeah,
some
yeah,
questions
yeah.
about that
I
one.
got two.
Um,
I got two totally
yeah,
separate starts with WWE. Neither of them is a wrestler. It's wild.
yeah.
It's wild.
Which I will also say too that like when I had my interview with them, I did get that call back like the same day to be like, hey, yeah, you're hired, you know, come over there. So like when I got hired for WWE, I so like a friend of mine was working in the same place that I was working at called like Spyscape. I don't know if you ever visited Spyscape here in New York City,
No,
but
I
like
haven't.
it's a spy museum. If you want
Cool.
to, like
That
you can
sounds
go look it
fun.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to work there for everyone that wants to know. A little freebie for you guys because I don't really reveal my my backstory like that. So my friend knew the hiring manager, and so I connected with the hiring manager, talked to them, went through the whole process. I even went on the Metro North all the way to Connecticut in the
Yeah.
summer, walked my ass to the freaking production like TV place to
Yeah.
have the interview in the summer, sweating my ass off, and then like that same day or at least like the next day, I got the call and was like, "Hey, you're hired." What I did was sit at a cubicle for 8 hours watching WWE programming to fix the WWE network to make the SEO stronger for people
Okay.
to
Okay.
search. Yeah, for people
Yeah.
to
Search
search
engine
for the right
optimization,
things.
which is
Yeah,
needed,
yeah,
is especially at the launch of the WWE Network was crucial
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, so I was in that in 2018, and then like I could tell you other stories too, but that's basically like how I got in, and
How
yeah,
long were you
I don't
there?
regret it. Only for 3 months. It was a
Okay.
temporary
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
project,
They usually
but
temp.
yeah, but normally like during my lunchtime after I was done, I would mingle with everybody. I would pass on my business cards. I would make sure that people know who I am, just to be like, "Hey, what you doing? Oh, I want to learn. What is this?" Like, I
Mm-hmm.
would talk to people.
100%.
Um,
Have to.
yeah,
Have to.
I would talk to people, get to know like this or that and stuff, but I don't regret it. With Triple H back now, I would definitely go back just to be under Triple H's wing now that I know command has changed. But now I guess we get to talk about you being a production assistant for NXT UK.
Yeah, that was a whole different journey. So I finished the internship up, and that was about 2 months before, or 1 month before COVID hit, was when I fully finished out the internship and had stopped working with WWE in that capacity. COVID hits. I moved back to New York. I have to leave Florida, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple months later, I'm graduating. It was expressed to me that if not for that, they would have kept me in Florida, which
Okay.
obviously would have been, a dream come true. And that's something that I still am trying to push, right? I still want to be in Florida. I love broadcasting just as much as I love, wrestling. With that being said, I graduate during the pandemic. Everybody's locked in. Instead of hiring me, they fire about 150 employees, which of course is
Yeah.
horrendous. It's so sad to see how that went down, which we all know. Um, so I'm trying to get hired with WWE, still doing the broadcasting thing, and it's just not really hitting. They don't have the touring schedule. They don't need the talent, and you can see
Yeah.
it as they even let go some talent at that time that weren't wrestlers. Uh, However, I did have a client at the gym that my father owns as I personal train, who was a quarterback. I was training him personally as a quarterback for some years, and his father had just gotten hired by WWE to do the documentary series Untold. So
Yeah.
now he's with the Rivals series, but at the time he was like the showrunner for Untold. And we were talking a lot about production and editing, and I had just during the pandemic when everybody's locked in, I just start working on that. I had learned a little bit in college, but not nearly enough to supplant a career in it. So, or support a career in it. So I try my hand. I'm practicing. I'm sending him my stuff. He's giving me feedback, and I'm working back on it. Draft 2, draft 3, draft 4, and I'm giving him all this work. I'm getting all this feedback. And remind you, he's in the WWE system, so now he knows how things should be looking from a wrestling standpoint. That's all the editing I was doing. So I finally get to a point where, or he gets finally to a point where he says, "All right, like I think you're ready for a potential opportunity with WWE. Let me
Uh
start
huh.
making some calls. Let's make some contacts. Let's see who's hiring right now in the company." And at first, it was actually a position with the WWE Network moving to Peacock. because all of that content needed to get over there. But it all had to be edited to Peacock specifications.
Yep.
As in, like, some of the TV 14 content needed to be changed. Some of the WWE, WWF stuff needed to be changed a little bit differently, that we were doing it in-house with the network. So that position was what I was initially going for. It didn't hit. They ended up dissolving the position, and like a week later, they interviewed me for NXT UK. I have that. I have a follow-up, and then they hired me for it. It was a 3-month temp. They extended me to 6 months.
Okay.
I did the 6 months, and then they were like, "Okay, cool, thanks, good job." Which, as wrestling fans know, NXT UK was coming to a close, and now it's completely gone. So it just made sense that they didn't bring me on to a position that wouldn't exist a couple months later. But in that time with NXT UK, like, I learned even more. It's just the same as when I was doing it with the Performance Center. Everything I was learning there, I was bringing back to my wrestling. So everything with UK, I was bringing it back. I never knew how to wrestle for TV until I started editing TV. So I wasn't, as a PA with NXT UK, I wasn't, getting coffee for people, picking up laundry, dry cleaning. I wasn't running papers all over the place. Like, I was actually doing a lot of the editing. I was editing highlight packages. I was editing story packages, vignettes, sometimes live, like the actual wrestling that had to get edited, that had to get cut around or add sound, cut around commentary, things like that. I was a part of the entire editing process, as well as some of the roles when it took on like a taping day. We would tape NXT UK. We would tape 8 episodes at a time. So that was 2 days, two 8-hour days or so of live wrestling in a row. And I had various roles during those days. So it was all of those things that it took to create wrestling television that I was being able to pull back and bring back to my wrestling. And, I am hard on myself. There are a lot of things that I know I could be doing better because of where I've been and because of who I've learned from. But like I said before, at 4 years wrestling, I'm ahead of where a lot of people are because of it. So I'm very fortunate to have been able to earn those opportunities, because it's not like anything was handed, but at the same time, those are, slim to none opportunities that I'm able to bring back to what I do.
Definitely. And that age-old saying of you're there at the right time, the right day, right time type of phrase. Don't be too hard on yourself, because I could be the same way. Like there's other things in my head where I'm like, I could always do so much better when it comes to like my content and how I post it out there, how I market myself. But at the end of the day, like, if you're happy with where you're at, and you know that there's this path that still needs to be done, you got lots of time to like do it, and
100%.
like trial by error, and like from our experiences, which is kind of cool hearing like the two different WWE sides. Which, by the way, for people listening out there, WWE does sign you to like a temporary contract, and then extends it based on like performance or whatever they deem as like a rubric or whatever it is. I just had a little bit of it's not really like a bad ending, so to speak, because I don't regret it, but like for the sake of this, a little bit of a weird bad ending for me on my end. But like, yeah, man, don't like beat yourself up, man. You're doing wonderful. I was gonna ask, like, because it said NXT UK, and I was like, did they ever fly you out to UK by any
I wish.
chance?
No.
Okay.
So the UK team during the pandemic didn't stop making TV. And there was just a short while where there wasn't any new wrestling coming out, but the UK team got to a point where we don't have to leave Connecticut to make TV. And the only time we'll go to the UK is if we have a takeover, a Blackpool, what are the other?
One of those. I just know that one.
The other UK takeovers that happened. So they would go over there for that. But yeah, so there were 3 teams that were running the UK team. It was running NXT UK. There was the actual UK wrestling roster and coaches and the Performance Center team. There was us in Connecticut who were producing all of it. So our director was in Connecticut. Our field manager was in UK. All of the editors were in UK. And then there was Matt Bloom and Shawn Michaels and Nigel McGuinness were in Orlando. So this was a tri-city production for every taping day. And Vic Joseph as well, who was in Orlando anytime he was doing commentary or helping out. He was in Orlando as well. So these were 3 cities all putting together live wrestling, all happening in the UK, which was amazing to
Okay.
me. But at the same time, I would have loved to go out to London to the BT Sport arena.
Yeah, because I was wondering, because I'm like, did they ever like fly you out? It's NXT UK, you're a production assistant. Maybe they need you on hand over there for some
If
reason, and then
if
bring you
we
back.
went if we went as a team to UK, I would have been a part of that for sure.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
didn't come to a situation where we needed it, especially during COVID. The remote
yeah,
work
yeah, yeah,
got so efficient.
yeah. Okay, cool, cool. So, in my way of thinking, that like they basically shot NXT UK and then send the footage over to you guys.
Exactly, that's exactly what happened. It all got shot
Okay,
in England, and then all got sent over to Connecticut. And then
okay,
when
so it
we
makes
finished
sense.
it, we sent it to Orlando for approval, and then put it out.
Of course, all the approvals, man. You have to make sure that like it goes according to plan.
Yep.
That is fantastic. Uh, I am a little jealous, but at the same time, I am proud that you went that way and like you stood with it. Because most people just don't really stay with like their dreams or what they like really want to do.
Yeah, it's
I'll say that to
difficult.
anybody.
It's
Yeah, it is
difficult,
difficult.
but I've known what I wanted to do since I'm a little kid, and
Yeah,
I've sort of geared my life, and not just myself, like the people around me. My parents have been supportive, and friends who've had my back. Like my community have helped me gear my life towards what I want to do, and I've
yeah.
had very few obstacles that turn me away from it. Right, the obstacles that you go through, that you overcome, you make sure that they don't steer you away, and that's what I've been very fortunate to have.
Totally, totally love that. So we're coming down to like the last little bit of this interview. So I'm just gonna ask you some like questions that's like not wrestling related.
Go for it.
What motivates you to keep on going?
The next thing I have going. So right now, the next opportunity I have is WXW Germany. I'm wrestling there
Mhm.
October 1st through 4th. I'll be over there, and so as long as I have something to look forward to, I just don't stop. And that can almost be to a fault, to where like I have to be busy all the time, but I don't like the stillness. I like to
Okay.
keep moving forward and always have something to push for. And so that thing I'm pushing for is whatever that next thing is.
Was there ever an obstacle that stopped you, but you thought outside the box and you were able to be like, all right, this obstacle is no longer here?
Oh yeah, it was the pandemic. I thought that I was going to be done wrestling entirely. It was partly because I left Florida and didn't have any connections in New York when it came to wrestling, and I didn't have a wrestling community up here. But it was also partially because I thought that I would work for WWE a lot sooner than I did, and so I thought that I wouldn't be able to wrestle even if I wanted to. The way I got around that were $20 round trip flights to Orlando, where Florida didn't really close and didn't really shut down wrestling too much. So I was able to continue through some of the pandemic, going to Florida or going to Georgia, and having opportunities to keep doing what I love.
That is awesome. $20 flights to like Florida.
It was like a $32 round trip flight on a weekend. I don't even know how they were pulling it off. But now they're getting us back with
Wrestling.
with overcharging. So
I hear the stories are like horrible.
it's brutal.
Um, I me and you talk about like community and building like communities and stuff like that. What are some ways you build your community?
Something that I've always found important, as simple as knowing and remembering people's names. My dad taught me something when I was younger, was meet everyone. And then my brother taught me a trick when it comes to knowing people's names. When you meet somebody, say their name back to them like 2, 3 times, and you won't forget it. I keep those. When you get to know somebody and when you get to know their name, it makes them feel good, and it opens them up to getting to know you too. And that's just something that I've always kept with me my entire life. So I pride myself on my ability to get to know people, and that's where it starts
I
with the name.
I love that. Yeah, names are always important. I have this tendency to talk to somebody, and then when I sort of like All right, cool. I'll then say my name, but I won't be the first person to be like, "Hey, I'm Maria," unless like I'm doing
It's like
something business wise.
it's basically a gimmick of mine at CCW. It's like, hi, I'm Jarett Diaz, because I have the necessity, I guess, to introduce myself to people and to get to know them back.
Yeah. But then again, I would just call you Bodega Boy as
And I'd be
as a little
fine with that.
nickname.
I would be fine with that too. However you remember me is good enough.
Yeah, and then if I ever get mad at you, be like your full name. I just did that with everybody. I do
Call
that
me
with
by my
everybody.
government if you're upset.
I
Fine.
do that with everybody. Yeah, with all my friends. Like if I know them as like a specific like nickname or like their username on like Xbox or like whatever I'm playing, I will
Yeah,
call them by that. And then if I get upset, I will say your name, and
full name.
you like fucked
100%.
up.
Yeah, 100%. That's how you keep me in
uh,
check.
Pretty much. That's all I do. But I guess I'll ask you one last question about that's like wrestling related about championships.
Sure.
On it, okay, I don't know
You mean
why
you mean
I'm
you mean
drawing a
my
blank.
you mean my
Well,
Paradise
I
Alley
mean,
Pro Wrestling
I
United
mean,
States Championship that I
I
post
mean, if you,
content with all the time? No, go
I
ahead.
mean, if you, I mean, if you want to wear it, but I was going to ask you about ranking like your top five championship title belts that you like in
Okay.
no specific order.
Is this by design visually, or is this by like their
It's
appeal, their
it's it it's basically however you want it.
importance?
It's your
Okay.
list.
Okay. That's valid. Uh, I think the cool. I, it's a terrible take, and nobody agrees with me, but I'm owning it. I don't care. It was the first probably wrestling toy I ever had. The John Cena Spinner WWE title. That monstrosity, that ugly ass belt, is my favorite. I think it's the coolest. I think it's so personal to the guy who held it, and maybe if I'm the only one, then so be it. I think it's great. So that's top number one to me. Um, I really like the old school IC belt with the black strap as opposed to the white strap for some reason. That's just what I prefer. Uh, Man, top five is tough. I think the AEW World Title is beautiful. I think it's just a beautiful piece of I guess company history for them. And I know the world agrees with me on this one. The NXT UK Championship belt is also beautiful. It is a work of art, that thing. So
Yeah, that was nice.
that's four. I'll tell you which one I didn't like at all is the brown like copper WWE tag title belts when they first unified them. And I
Yeah,
think it was
yeah,
like Primo and Epico had them, or maybe
yeah.
Morrison and Miz had them
So
first.
long ago.
I don't remember who had those belts first, but when they were copper, they were gross. Not a fan. Not a fan of those.
Yeah, that's not cool. So wait, what's number five? I think you were up to number
I
four.
gave you four and then one bad one. Um,
Oh, okay, okay. So then if that was the best, okay,
yeah,
that's if you wanted to be that way.
that's my five. I don't know.
All right, cool. I've had a
Oh,
wonderful
you know
time
what?
talking
You
with
know
you.
what? I
What's up?
take it back. The
Okay.
IWGP Championship, the one
Oh,
that's kind of the one that's kind of shaped like a bird, the newer one. I think it looks cool. It's another bad take, but I just like it. I think it's cool. I think it's cool.
oh my God.
I can be
I'll tell.
wrong. I can be wrong.
I mean, I'll tell you this from like loving New Japan and whatnot. It has grown on me. It looks good on certain wrestlers. I don't think
I
that's a
agree
belt
with
for
you.
like
I agree with
every.
you.
Yeah,
I think Osprey having it versus like Okada having it has a different feel.
it does. It really does. And then like Jay White having it now, it's a little different feel. And I'm like, it grows on you depending on who like the wrestler
I
is.
like it. I think it's cool.
I still like the version
I,
4, the
I
one that
like
they had before.
I think you can tell this about my wrestling too. Is I like flashy. I like a little bit over the top and modern. As much as I can appreciate old school and like have an affinity for it, the big gold belt I think is a little overrated. I don't know if it's just because it's prestigious doesn't make it a good looking belt. That's what I'm gonna say.
All right, I can understand that part, but like that belt is my belt because I'm a big fan of Ric Flair. So like growing up, my
No,
dad
so am
would
I. I love Ric Flair. I just don't think the NWA World's Championship, as it was known at the time, is the best looking belt. That's all. That's a nostalgia thing you're about to tell me, and you should tell me anyway. Please tell me.
That like my dad had me watching old school wrestling, so like I just grew up on Ric Flair and like technical stuff. So I like technical based wrestlers,
Mhm.
but if you can do all the flippy stuff with technical and has psychology and story, you're golden in my book. So
Yep.
I need
Totally
something,
vibe with that. Totally
yeah.
vibe with that. That's substance. That's the substance that's there.
Yeah. So, I had a wonderful time talking to you, man. You're like really like up here. I was like, oh, this is so
Oh, that's
great.
so great. Thank you
Uh,
so much. I had a wonderful time talking to you. You're doing a great
uh,
job.
thank you, man. Yeah. So I'm gonna give you, your own spotlight. Put yourself over. Whatever you want to do. It's all up to you.
Okay. Sure. Okay. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at the Jarett Diaz, JarettDiaz, because some people can't spell my name right, and that's fine. Um, New York has the best teams in baseball. Uh, you can find me on Wrestling Open like every couple weeks on IWTV. I wrestle at CZW. I'm going to be in WXW Germany in October, which I'm super stoked about. And I love what I do more than anything in the world. That's the last thing I'll say.
You want to know what's interesting? I say that every single time. That is my tagline. I love what I do. You can find it on all of my like Twitter timeline, in all of my podcast episodes. I do say that I love what I do. Like and you
Well, then
never
I meant to talk to you today.
Yes, yeah, definitely. This is why it's a little like I have this cheesy ass smile, right? That I'm just so
Yeah,
excited about.
just own it. Be earnestly happy. That's what we need. That's what we
I
need
am
more in wrestling and just in the world.
I am like extremely like legit like super happy about this. I was like, oh, there's some similarities. Like, who uses this? But all right. So Jarett put himself over. I'm gonna put myself over. Thank you everyone for stopping by to watch a brand new episode, an interview with Jarett on Square Circle Podcast. I am Marie Shadows. You can follow me at Twitter at Marie_Shadows. Make sure to follow the Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Marie_Shadows, where it is September. The longer you sub, the more you save. And make sure to do that. Also, sign up to my newsletter. It is free along with paid content. marieshadows.substack.com. This was fantastic. I'm definitely gonna have to have you on again to talk about more stuff or whatever the case may be, or we could collab, whatever it is.
Have me on
But
anytime. Happy to chat.
yeah, Jarett is awesome. Make sure to go follow him, and I will see everybody in the next episode. And bye, guys.